I have been programming since I was 12 years old, and while learning it, I have encountered an insane number of issues, from not knowing where to start, to spending all night debugging something, to jumping from language to language. And that is why I'm making this video, because I want to show you what I would have done differently if I could learn programming from the beginning again. We're starting out with probably one of the more obvious points for an experienced programmer, but it is definitely not obvious for a beginner, which is stick to a single programming language. You want to stick to a single programming language because you need to get sufficient at this language. Without getting sufficient at a single language, you will never have your basics down. And the basics are your foundation to everything else, to becoming a great programmer. If you, for example, spend 2 or 3 days messing around with Python, declaring variables, doing some basic math operations, maybe declaring a function, maybe writing your own little first class, and then you suddenly decide, oh wait, maybe Java is pretty cool, and then you immediately switch to Java, then everything you have learned in Python doesn't necessarily translate to Java. Sure, the basic concepts, data types, functions, classes, stuff like that always translates. That's almost the same with every language. But all the keywords change, the syntax changes a little bit. Those things, you have to relearn all of this. And this will never make you a great programmer if you have to start from the beginning over and over again. So stick to a single programming language until you are able to write your first tiny little project. And this is exactly what brings me to my next point. Learn by writing projects instead of watching tutorials. Watching tutorials is totally fine. I have done it numerous times, but just from watching a tutorial or following a tutorial, you will never be truly sufficient in what you are trying to learn. You have to come up with solutions for problems yourself. Meaning, once you have all your basics covered with the language that you decide to learn, you will need to go and build something with it. Build a super simple app. Build maybe a little text adventure, build a number guessing game. You can create a simple tic-tac-toe application for the command line. Start working on problems like FizzBuzz, where you print the numbers from 1 to 100, and if a number is divisible by 3, you print fizz. If it's divisible by 5, you print buzz, and if it's divisible by both, you print FizzBuzz. That's like one of the first programming issues that beginners are given to solve. And eventually you will reach a point where there is no more tutorials for what you're trying to build. Sure, there are tutorials on how to clone Instagram or WhatsApp or how to create a game, but eventually your problems will become so specific there is no way in hell that you will be able to solve it by just following a tutorial, because you want to be able to write code on your own without as little assistance as possible, aside from Googling things, of course. And that's the most important point. It's to escape tutorial hell, where you do not have to watch tutorial after tutorial without learning anything. Once you start getting into projects, building bigger and bigger things, you will steadily gain experience on working on bigger and bigger projects, which is exactly what the job market wants and what makes you a great programmer. Now, if you're in the job market for software development, you will eventually have to collaborate with people on your code or your code base. And for that reason, as number 3, you have to learn Git. Git is a version control system which allows you to collaborate on the same piece of software and then merge the changes from different people together. You can create different branches where people work or teams work on different features at the same time and push the progress on the project forward like that as a team. It also allows you to save your code so nothing gets lost in case your MacBook or your PC ever decides to nuke itself. Honestly, I wish I still had all of my code bases from when I was a beginner at 12 or 13 years old, because I didn't know what Git was at the time, so I obviously didn't use it. I never saved anything, and I've been working on some obviously beginner projects, but some more or less medium-sized projects, and I wish I could look into my old code and just remember what I tried to solve back then, right? And the last point that will skyrocket your developer career to the absolute moon is learn an industry relevant framework. Once you're actually sufficient with the language, you can build some bigger things. You don't have to follow a tutorial for everything. Go and learn a framework. Look up which framework for your language is relevant for the kind of sector that you're trying to get into. If you're in web development and you know JavaScript, look up how React works or how Next.js works. If you're programming Java, look at Spring Boot. If you're using Python, look at NumPy, look at Pandas. If you're in data science, maybe look at Django or Flask if you're in web development with Python. If you're learning C++, go learn STL so you can make games with it. This is necessary because the reality out there is that if a software is meant to be launched to the market one way or another, it's always time critical, meaning a company wants to get things done as quickly as possible. And obviously, even if you're on the whole solopreneur, I will launch my own stuff thing, you don't want to do everything yourself. You just want to get a toolbox which allows you to build things super quickly without having to do everything by yourself. Because obviously you do not want to reinvent the wheel unless it's absolutely necessary. Go learn a framework and absolutely skyrocket your career. Now, if this video was helpful, leave a subscribe. If you want to keep watching, there is something for you to watch as always over here, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.